Recording in progress again.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, Taps, yeah, we got cut off there quite rudely, I should say, in that
It's
last
the free
comment.
stuff because they were like this was the end of this free session. Like, okay,
Yeah, you see,
please.
that's the thing about free stuff. But that's why we want you guys to subscribe so we can make money off this thing. We can make money, then we can get the
Yes.
paid plans, then we can carry on
Yeah.
going. We can like go
Where
Joe
did
Rogan on them. Like let's have Joe
where did
Rogan.
they subscribe?
You see, we
Do
must
they
subscribe.
subscribe on the link below or
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
top
yes, they
left?
must do this. Yeah, they
Way?
must. This doesn't. It's like wherever they must just subscribe to the Historian Stash. It's for free. You guys get everything for free. That's the cool thing. Like we've got to pay for our stuff, except for Zoom, but like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
guys get this for free. So please subscribe to it. Then we can have like a continuous
Please.
podcast thing without any interruption. We'll be freaking amazing. We'll be like the Joe Rogan of South Africa. So come on, guys, like
Yeah.
let's go. If you like this type of stuff, if you like what Taps
Yeah.
is talking, if you like what we're saying as a collective, please do subscribe, like this, share it with your chommies. What you were saying earlier, but is like there is a time and place for conciliation on the fact that acceptance of conciliation and that we are getting back and that there has to be like a sort of a buffer time of saying okay, yeah, it is a big switch for us to go just apartheid, no apartheid, democracy.
Mm.
But at the same time, I think 30 years has been enough time now that like,
Mm.
a lot of us are still in that mindset of let's just, keep keep to ourselves here, keep in our own lanes. And it's
Mm.
perpetuated also by obviously by political involvement on both sides of the spectrum, right and left.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there has to be a point where if you are a lacquer oak, okay,
Mm.
then, and I think I'm a lacquer oak, then nothing
Mm.
should actually stop us from having a lacquer time, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it all happened even during before apartheid
Yeah.
became an official policy of the National Party government. I
Yeah.
mean, both Neil Roses was talking about ordinary whites
Mm.
in
Yeah.
his book. So all of this, and I also hear stories about through my mother. So she was a domestic worker working in Gos Hayes
Mm. Hostile.
in yeah hostel in Wopstad Girls School, like a long time ago, I think late 90s.
Mm.
So she used to talk about the goodness of her employers. So she had two
Well,
teachers she was working for because they also teachers stayed on campus.
yeah.
Not only pupils, but also teachers stayed on campus. So she was she was working for them there on campus. So she worked for them. I think it is. I'm not sure if she worked for them at the same time or in two different times, but it was around late 90s. I was still in primary. And mind you, in my head, I'm not aware that I'm making my own empirical investigation into white Afrikaners and
Mm.
versus us, how we can live together, not in the same, not another band of Nelson Mandela
Rainbow
and Desmond.
Nation.
No, no, no. For
Yeah.
me, that doesn't cut it. That's not
Yeah.
how we musicians better start. So she'll talk about how she loves hanging around black people. But the moment her other white counterparts to see my mother, comes to see her rather, while my mother is there, she now has to pretend like she's a strict Afrikaner, does not like
Yeah.
black people.
Yeah.
But then deep down, she was a good person, and
Well,
that sense of humane nature will still make you see how apartheid robbed all of us of experiencing each other from a human level.
mm. Mm.
The thing about the whole thing is that you spoke about the white problem. The thing about the whole thing is also the native question. I think
Mm.
Botha, when Botha became president, was the same issue on, okay, so we have amalgamated two former Boer republics and two former British colonies into South Africa, into the union government. So what do we do with black people?
Mm.
What must we do?
Yeah.
What do we do? And but I know this is gonna sound very controversial, but the way I see it, I feel the land is gone. I don't think we're ever gonna get it back unless we do it constitutionally. And
Mm.
the way things are going in South African political landscape, it doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon.
Mm.
And also, when you look at how it was gone, how and all the consolidation, whether legally, political, that we made to ensure that it stays in the hands of the minority,
Mm.
it makes you think, okay, when the likes of Solomon Sane or John Dube or Plaki realize that South Africa is gone, they said, okay, now the least the government can do for us is to allow us to sit around the table as you
Mm.
make decisions about the way the country is going. Even if we nod, even if we cringe, even
Mm.
if we wink at each other, but can we just be there, just to
Mm.
understand, okay, where the country is going? And
Mm.
can you allow us to continue to show you, hang on, this can work, but can we at least improve that?
Yeah.
If you are allocating a bigger budget for a white child, can you consider
Yeah. It's
so
yeah.
so to sum up, so you realize that somehow apartheid could have went on without violence, without dispossession, without separate development.
Mm.
It,
Mm.
it could have worked either way. Like,
Mm.
I don't think there was a need for violence.
It's, I mean, these are pretty deep points that you're making, bro. But like for me, I feel that apartheid as it stood, like the National Party brand, using the security structures of the state in order to enforce racial policies. I mean, it was despicable. But the thing is what you're talking about also the table, you know, of at least trying to provide an opportunity at the table. Many would say, you know, isn't that a bit of a cop out?
Mm,
You know, in
mm.
terms of getting African readers to the table, but then they'll kind of like selling out their own by sitting at the table
Oh,
and then saying that, okay, master, I'll sit at the table because you have asked me to. Okay,
I
boss,
get you. Yeah.
I'm here. I'll talk because you tell me to. Many would argue that that is kind of a sign of submission in itself, and that's, you
Well,
know, and these are the guys who would say that the armed struggle was also inevitable. Then because even just by agreeing to sit at the table, you are submitting to the vid
mm.
boss. So, you know,
So,
just devil's advocating here. How would you
yeah,
respond?
I get you. I get you. I get that. That's why I made a disclaimer, and I'm gonna sound controversial. The
Yeah,
thing about it
well, you
is,
can be a
yeah,
controversial, yeah, but
the thing about it is, I
just
know
I
I
can't
sound
be.
like,
I can't be controversial, but you can be
no, you
controversial.
can. No, say it. Say it. I'm here to protect you because we're talk. We need to. The thing is, we come at the we came at the we come at the place where we are comfortable to talk about stuff outside the camera, the lens of the camera,
Yeah,
and it starts there. There's a place for it.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm saying this because the Msanes, the Dubes, the Soplakis realize that the moment the South African Act of 1909 was passed, so and the Cape liberal tradition was scrapped out, the possibility of having a South Africa that we aspire as Black people was gone.
Mm,
So you are forever going to be the pariah in
mm,
your own land.
mm.
But what I'm saying is, think about from the 1930 Native Land Act, how many laws were passed ever since that continue to dehumanize, that continue to segregate Black people. And think about how after the armed struggle started in 1961 all the way to 1990, when the liberation movements were unbanned, ANC was unbanned, PNC was unbanned, all people who were in exile were also unbanned. And now we have 4 years later, the new South Africa, 1924, happens, blah, blah, blah. Think about why the very politicians have not had the same conversation. Because right now, the question would be, where do we start? Yes, we have evidence of this land needs to belong to so-and-so, this land needs to belong to so-and-so. Let me make a simple example about my hometown, for example.
Yeah.
So we have the Roman Dutch law that protects every South African.
Yeah.
Right. And secondly, in the Free State Provincial Archives, you have a big brown leather book of all the names of white farmers from 1875 when Hoopstad was founded, possibly to date, maybe until 1950s rather. So the Dutch were the one who were recording, or maybe we call them Afrikaners, but usually they say when we read about that, or everything's written in Dutch. Let me put it that way.
Yeah. It's Dutch written, but it's Afrikaans, yeah.
It's Afrikaans, yes.
Yeah.
So they were going around start surveying all the farms and making record of who owns the farm. So there's a list at all. So today, when you go to court and say, I want this particular farm belongs to my great-grandfather, and the court will say, okay, you must prove it to us. How does this belong to your great-grandfather? Nobody's going to say, yes, because of the injustices of the past, we know it belongs to your great-grandfather. You need to prove it. So the current owner would go to the archive and say, here is the evidence that shows. You get that?
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is, I don't want to see us burning tires, burning schools, burning libraries, burning infrastructure, fighting for our land as Black people. But I want to see us understand how the land was taken and how we can get it back, if we can ever get it back.
Right.
I want us to be realistic. The more that is sitting somewhere, I mean, you know how multi-layered history is. Today, like when you go to that the church in Makanda, the one that is facing under the arch, you know, that is it. There's so many multi-layered history about it. Before it was erected, the building was erected, it was something else. I think it was the Kral of Magomo, one of the closer kings. So what I'm saying is, there are so many layers to it.
Right.
So which layer do we peel off first?
Right.
When we want to talk about the issue of land, when you want to talk about reconciliation, when you want to talk about what's the word when you need to be compensated again? There's a political term for it.
Restitution. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not just it's what I'm saying is, you cannot just say, hey, white man, this is to be my land, I want it back. A white man's going to come back and say, no, actually, I can prove now, as we speak, it is my land. Do you see what I mean? So we end up not having a conversation about it because we're like, we've reached that end.
Yeah.
And then how do we move past that huge challenge? Because that's what the ANC government cannot solve. No government can solve that issue. So when I was talking about sitting around the table, I wasn't necessarily saying, oh, you must play yes bass. But I was saying you must figure out, how do we reconcile these histories to make sense of the future and the way forward.
Sure.
Because on the first part of that area could be it was the fort. Before it was the fort, it was this. Before it was this, it is that.
Yeah.
So when I come back to claim that land, how do I now account for other people who can also come back and say, no, 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 before your grandfather bought it, he he before your black grandfather bought it, it was the person who sold it to him stole it from my great grandfather.
Mhm.
Do we stick to the fact that I bought it, or do we go back and understand how? Do you see
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
complicates history. That makes our history so complicated, and politicians love to oversimplify it. And the
100%.
Msani and the Dubes were not saying we're gonna play yes bus here, but they were saying let's sit around the table and say and think about how do we reach a compromise?
Mm.
How do we make sense of this reality that we have?
Mm.
Because right now you could have all the students coming together and sitting around the same issue and saying, no, 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 we're not saying you never owned this land as Black people, but we also have proof that shows we own this land. We rightfully own this land. And the Constitution protects us. We put a very simple under a trust.
Yeah.
Once it's under a trust, you cannot
Can't
buy
touch it.
it, you
No.
cannot touch it. So if someone gets the news that no, this farm used to belong to your grandfather, but now it's under a trust, how do you reconcile their pain and the understanding that it's gone?
You see,
You can't just say, no, man, it's gone. But
yo,
you need to make them understand. And that's where the conversation is important.
yeah,
That's why we need to have the conversation to say, we have so many histories, so many layers. Which one do we peel first? How do we reconcile those layers? How do we use the law to protect us? How do we use the law to call us to order? What do we do?
mm.
No one is answering those important questions.
You know, when you talk like that, I think about the TRC, in the mid 90s and how that, that should have been the tip of the iceberg. That should have been for all its faults that was attached to the TRC, that should have been the start, the initiator of these conversations. But instead, it
Yeah.
was viewed in particularly Afrikaner conservative circles as being a witch hunt.
Mm,
In order
mm,
to basically smear each and every person that was involved in the apartheid apparatus as
mm.
essentially a Nazi, and the same kind of vitriol that Nazis were painted with after the Second World War. And I mean, I'm not saying that these guys don't meet the name, but a, a
Mm.
lot of people close down the idea of conversations because of that feeling of we don't want to open ourselves up for possible retribution because we are talking about this freely. And I think a lot of people
Yeah.
didn't know what the hell was going on after apartheid. It was like just
Yeah.
everyone standing there. Yeah, no, we're going to free Mandela. Mandela is going to be free, and like people didn't really
Yeah.
know like
Yeah. Yeah.
what the end game was on that. Like
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
the natural conclusion of apartheid?
Yeah. Even Albisex said they were cornered. Or there was no time for them to seek justice.
Mm.
It was just to get this thing out of the way.
Yeah, yeah,
Because to go back to the issue of justice, then we don't have negotiations. Then we
yeah.
don't go to elections. We don't have the new South Africa because when you are here looking for justice, we're not going to jail.
We're not exactly. So we need
Not
to
taking
have that.
responsibility.
We need to have something that protects us, and that's why it's such a unique situation that happened in South Africa in the early 90s. Because, and I say this all the time, and then people get angry with me. But when I say
Mm,
that the nationalists weren't really defeated in a
mm,
in a military sense, they
mm,
or in a struggle sense. The thing is, they
mm,
were defeated from within. It was to do not necessarily with the struggle from the outside, But when you
mm,
get your constituents who are tired of the economic situation, and they
mm,
come to you, not I don't think many young South Africans know this, but in 1992, was it 1992? There was a
mm,
referendum held by the government who sent out a referendum for white South Africans to vote whether the ANC should be unbanned and whether there should be free and fair democratic elections.
mm,
Do you know what the percentage was of of how many people voted yes for it?
mm,
I might be lying, but you can look this up. Um,
mm.
but it was well over 75% voted that we should have free and fair elections. Now,
What?
yeah, yeah,
Why?
because there was an economic situation which was untenable, and I think many people felt that that this was a slow decline of Afrikaner rule in South Africa, but at the same time also we can't carry on like this. It's not sustainable
Mm,
to go into a new millennium. All these investments have pulled out.
yeah,
And
yeah,
the main thing I think in white South African minds was economy. Um,
yeah.
so and also Madiba was already released at that point too. The
Mm,
ANC was unbanned. This was a
mm,
call of basically saying like, should we have free and fair elections? And a vast
mm,
majority of white people said yes because of the fact that if we carry on like this, I mean, remember this
mm.
was the time of Boy Patong. South Africa is on the verge of civil war kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like to such an extent that they were deploying UN military advisors and people onto the streets to try
Mm.
and contain the situation. You had the Beer who were causing all sorts of havoc in
Eugene de Blanche.
Aye,
Yeah.
man. He was causing havoc in Bophuthatswana. The
Yeah.
that famous scene of a Bophuthatswana army corporal standing over two Beer guys who had been
Mm.
shot, and he would execute them in view of the world's media. I mean, this was chaos. So
Yeah, I remember that.
and that
Yeah.
was happening at that time. I think that happened about a year after the referendum occurred. So you can see
Mm.
that there was a call among the vast majority of white South Africans to say we've had enough. We just want to get to a point where we can just we want our economy back again. We want to get the restrictions lifted. We want the embargoes lifted that we can get back to a normal inflation rate, and we are able to pay for a loaf of bread with normal cost. But
Mm.
the again, even with that, even with the referendum, there was still a vacuum that was left because no one really understood what did the end of apartheid mean. Um,
Yeah.
I'm sure that our parents knew that it was going to be black majority rule, but what does that mean? The only
Yeah.
precedent that we had on that was the rest of Africa during the
Mm.
1960s, or late 50s and early 1960s. But is that
Mm.
really a blueprint to follow in the 90s?
Mm.
So no one really understood what it was going to be. The people who were involved in upper echelons of government, what were they
Mm.
thinking? Like, it's not rhetorical. I literally want to know what were they thinking in terms of,
Yeah.
how is the transition of power going to take place? We all know
Mm.
that Evia was promised that there was going to be the transitional government that was going to go over up until 1996. Um,
Yeah.
and then he was also, along with Thabo Mbeki, he was promised a vice presidential position.
Mm.
He was co-vice president. I mean, like,
Mm.
where have you heard of
Yeah.
such?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Oh,
then
it's,
in
yeah.
'96,
Yeah.
then he kind of like just calls it because it's like well, we are getting ignored. The National Party is also being ignored because there's no real need for us anymore. So,
Yeah,
well, literally, because they were the parliament was overwhelmingly ANC. They
yeah,
but like where I'm going with this is the fact that we're looking at where um, the TRC was kind of like put in as almost like the Nuremberg trials of South Africa, and also there were these calls that like how fair are these TRCs going to be, because this is going to be also applied on those people from the struggle, the ANC, so-called
mm,
terrorists or freedom fighters who
mm,
also meted out terror campaigns against people. Were these guys also going to be implicated in these trials? I mean, you look at the Pretoria bomb attack in 1983, which killed I think 8 people. 4 of them
mm,
were black people, I think.
mm,
And then, like I was saying earlier, the army officer Boy Patong, who was not Boy Patong of Bopututswana, who
mm.
was who was also brought into the TRC, and he was granted amnesty. But then you had like the majority of white people who were implicit in the apartheid apparatus, in the security police
Mm.
and those structures, who were not granted amnesty, and who also then a lot of them then said, "Well, screw it, we're not going to ask for amnesty because we see this
Yeah,
as a witch hunt." So the thing is, like
yeah,
there wasn't really a chance to have these types of hard conversations because of
yeah,
of the idea of are we being singled out? Like we can't engage in a conversation which is perceived to be equal, because we'll always see that, like, is there going to be an accusation leveled against us, right?
yeah. You know what makes the whole thing difficult? Running my point parallel to what you just said is white Afrikaner police, security personnel, what have you, at the TFC they were seen as victims,
Yeah,
as sorry, as
as
perpetrators,
perpetrators. Yeah,
as
great.
perpetrators. And then on the other hand, who killed the children or the family members of black families
Mm,
who were the TRC. So it becomes so difficult to explain all that you've said to the victims'
mm,
parents.
mm.
Do you see what I mean?
Extremely, yeah.
And that's where politicians thought, hey, tapping into that part of the conversation,
You see.
we're not gonna have it. But truth of the matter is, these are the two sides of the same coin.
Mm,
Because you guys are telling us about this idea of reconciliation, and you guys are talking about the idea of forgiveness. So it means I don't have to sit before the TFC. I can just say, yeah, I'm not interested, and I move
yeah,
on.
yeah.
And then you made me kill in the name of apartheid.
Mm.
So I'm not a murderer. I was killing in the name of
I
a
was following
system.
orders. That's
I
the
was following
that's the
orders. So
main
I'm not a
phrase, right?
murderer.
I was
Yes,
following
but
orders.
now, yeah, but now to the victim, it's a different conversation altogether. Your parents killed my parents.
Mm,
If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be where I am. So
mm.
it's so everything becomes so violent.
Yeah. And
But could
two si
apartheid could
and
have
dichotomous, right? There's like there's this
yeah,
two-sidedness. It's like
yes,
you're either the victim or
yes,
the perpetrator. You can't
yeah,
be
but
both.
you see what I mean? And there isn't any, no one is reconciling these 2 points,
You see.
this dichotomy into one. So I think that's where I'm coming from when I say we haven't had a conversation. We need to talk. We need to have a conversation.
Mm.
As difficult as they are, to understand how you're feeling about all of these things, because you don't know how you're feeling.
No.
Only you and I talking about this matters, but both the perpetrator and the victim are not talking to each other.
Yeah.
Their children, their children's children are not talking to each other. And the so-called perpetrator and the so-called victim. In fact, the so-called perpetrator is seen as the father, and the
Yeah.
so-called victim is seen as the child. Again, there's that child
The
complex
child
again.
parents. Mm-hmm.
Child parent complex again. That says, hi man, let's move on. You know, at UFS there was other lady who I don't remember what we were talking about, but I remember her words verbatim. She was like, ah, these kids are always complaining about apartheid. They're not even there.
Mm. Mm.
So when you speak like that, do you know how much you're taking away from people? That's violence.
Mm.
So what I'm saying is, at large, what I'm saying is, could apartheid have happened without violence? And that's one.
Mm.
Two, when AB Kluma and AB Kluma, James Moroka, those are the two former ANC presidents, and the time when Moroka became the president of the ANC, what do you call this? The one that happened in Kliptown in Johannesburg in 1955, the Freedom Charter,
Mm.
happened under his tenure as president. But before him, uh, Kruma spoke about. So Kruma is part of this ANC elites who were against the armed struggle because they felt peaceful resistance is the answer. And mind you, I'm speaking in hindsight, obviously. That's the bit of being a historian. You can speak in
Yeah, yeah.
hindsight.
Always.
So in hindsight, I'm thinking, well, maybe passive resistance uh, was going to be a good policy if the government was not violent.
Mm.
So which answers
Mm.
the question why there was an armed struggle in the first place?
Yeah.
Because they have to respond with violence to fight violence.
Yeah. Yeah.
But but apartheid, before it was even called apartheid, was still ongoing. Or it was colonialism at the time without the physical violence.
Yeah.
But the violence was draconian, was legal at that time. So I feel there could have been a way to rebuild a new South Africa with the very same policies, but with less violence. Or
Sure.
should I? Or let me turn it around and say, I think you spoke about the veto of national party government, but but shortly before that, had South Africa had National Party not won the national elections, and had Smuts became the president, what would have happened?
Mm.
And then on the Black nationalist historiography side or history side or historical perspective, you think about how they had a vision that is 1910. If you, Louis Botha, accommodate Black people in the running of this country, become the government of national unity of some sort, we could be a new South Africa 100 years later would have looked like a first world South Africa.
Mm.
We would have been a first world country in Africa. Because now all of these laws that were created to disenfranchise Black people, to dehumanize them, to take away all the advantages, contributed into the mess that we are in today. But had you said, look, we are not equal, but let's go for equity. If I have if I have if I have um, 1 rand and I see you have 10 cents and somebody else who next to you has 90 cents, I'm not going to give both of you equal amount of money. I'm going to give you the one that has 90 cents, I'm going to give them only 10 cents. The one that has 10 cents, I'm going to give them 90 cents so that both of you can have 1 rand each.
Mm.
Instead of saying, I'm giving both of you the same amount. For me, 1910 could have been that decisive moment that sets the tone for what South Africa could be in 2024.
Mm.
And unfortunately, it did set the tone. The exclusion of Black people meant this is how we see South Africa.
Mm.
That set the tone. But I wish it could have been a bit different because of on a much personal level, if your Jan Smarts, especially Jan Smarts, he was close family friend with uh, John Tembo Jabavu to a point that when Noni Jabavu went to study in England, he's the one who organized accommodation for her, just
Sure.
and a family that stayed with her in England, and and she called him Warm. That's
Wow.
Jan.
Wow.
See what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like these people live together, they love each other,
Mm.
their children together. I
Mm.
mean, you know what I'm talking about.
Mm. Mm.
But there was this social engineering mechanism that continued to change the public psychology of that kind of unity
Mm.
to say you cannot live together.
Mm.
If you don't live together, we're going to compensate you for it. If you're
Sure.
gonna build your houses, we're gonna give you this, we're gonna create more job opportunities for you. You don't have to compete with Black people for job opportunities. You're going to enjoy yourself.
Yeah. Mm.
So for me, it could have things could have turned out differently without violence. So I don't want to see us again using violence when we're talking about how do we reconfigure South Africa for the betterment of every citizen.
Hey, Taps. Yeah. Heartfelt, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Sure.
violence tends to take us 10 steps back. If I invade a white owned, let's say I as a Black person, I invade your house and I say I'm doing so because this land is mine.
Yeah.
It belongs to us. You guys must go back to Holland.
Mm.
I just gonna say, Ish, actually, you're right. Just the other day I was reading about it.
Yes.
Man,
Yeah.
sorry, take the land. I'm moving out of my
Oh,
house.
I'm really sorry
Oh,
about everything.
oh, wake up. Oh, wake
Yeah.
up. Wake the children up. Let's pack our bags. We're going to Holland. In as much as you're angry, what have you, but it's not as simple as that.
Mm.
The white man will fight back.
Yeah.
So how do we then have a conversation without violence, without being violent, without violence?
Yeah.
How do we put aside violence and have that frank conversation?
Yeah.
So for me, that can take us somewhere.
And hopefully it does. Hopefully these
Yeah,
conversations that you and I have also have some kind of meaning to people who listen to it, and that we
yeah.
continue these things and maybe spark off other conversations or similar conversations that people are thinking about, but didn't really have, because that's another thing is people are
Mm.
afraid, to really air their views, for fear of some kind of retribution, for some kind of,
Yeah, yeah.
that there's going to be race baiting and, all that kind of stuff. So where we can be in a position that we can have conversations like these, and then we also are honest to ourselves and to the people that we are talking to, that we can have those conversations, and that people who are listening can take it, not just listen for the sake of talking back or arguing, but also
Mm,
listening and taking it in, be able
mm.
to just be able to acknowledge what is being said by really
Yeah,
listening to it. I think that will open a lot of doors, psychologically,
yeah,
but also
yeah.
in terms of just having people understand. I think and the
Yes.
understanding element of it is really, really important. That there can be conversations where we might not agree with each other, but I
Mm.
I understand where you're coming from, and I acknowledge
Yes,
that. Um,
yes,
and where, it doesn't boil over into some kind of, briar fire argument of, ach no man, you're talking kak man, and like just bugger off.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
then
you
the
see,
doors close again. That there's some kind of understanding
yeah,
that filters through, because I think both of us understand, on that, like, each other's backgrounds. We understand the like the ideas which cultivated our understanding of the world. But
yes,
at
yes,
the same time, like, it's we also understand that it's hard to do so, and that it comes from years and years of, talking, of conversations. Um,
yes,
yeah,
and that is easy for us, and we understand our privilege
yes,
to
yeah,
speak the way we speak of we've healed. I've healed from certain traumas that could not have allowed me to speak the way I'm speaking.
mm,
So once you do the shadow work, you understand that you are now vibrating to the highest frequency.
mm,
So as high as you vibrate, your thinking, the way you look at things, it becomes almost almost meta theoretical or metaphysical.
mm,
The way you look at things, it's not the same. It's not the same as how a layman sees things.
right,
So now the unlearning and relearning that needs to happen would only happen if you are healing from your issues.
mm,
For me, it's about the psyche. It's about because everything starts in the mind. So if
mm,
your mindset is informed by the hatred of Afrikaners,
mm,
that's violence. That
mm.
it becomes difficult for you to hear what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm talking gag basically to
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. And even before you
shit.
utter your first word, there's that preconception of, ah man, I know
Yeah,
where you're coming from. I'm not going to listen to a
yeah,
word because I'm gonna shut it down.
yeah,
And that
yeah.
happens on both sides more often than not. I mean,
Of
a lot
course.
of
Yeah, yeah,
people
of
kind of
course.
like, they judge you just by the way you look or by the way you carry yourself. And
Yes.
even before you utter, and that's why, like, for us, for you and I think a lot of people will see this podcast or like, okay, there goes the EFF collaborator along with the Vryheidsfront guy. What are they trying to get out of this? Like,
Yeah,
if you listen to our conversation first, then you'll see it.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
nothing can be further from the truth.
Yeah, no, nothing. And for me, it's like I've said, it's a conversation. It's not a debate.
No,
It's a conversation. It's about understanding how violence has taken away a lot from us, from humanity,
yeah,
and also understanding what bred violence
yeah,
or violent behavior, and acknowledging the story from both sides,
yeah.
and out of that, hoping that our common humanity will drive us forward. And yeah, sounds like a cliche, but it's about always thinking after this, what then?
Mm, mm-hmm.
It's not the same as okay, we had national government elections in 1994, and then now we don't know what to do.
Yeah,
Now you're gonna introduce Kwaito, and then you're gonna make people dance, and
yeah,
while you still try to figure out what's our national consciousness, what's our identity,
yeah.
we'll do other stuff. We see, so it's like our mission now would be that to say, let's talk, let's have a
Mm,
conversation.
yeah.
Let's understand each other. Let me hear your pain. Let me hear all this misperception you've heard about me. Do you want me to clarify them? Do you want me do you
Well,
want to hear my side of the story?
let me clarify it. No, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Let me
yeah.
clarify it for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is my side of the story important to you? Yeah, yeah. You hate me. because of apartheid, yeah, because of violence that
Yeah.
apartheid brought. But do you want to hear my side of the story? You don't know me. You heard stuff about me, and it's been repeated so many times. Some of it is true, some of it is not. But
Mm.
do you want to hear my side of the story, or
Yeah.
you don't? So for me, that's the question we should be asking ourselves.
Mm. Chaps,
Yeah,
thank you so much, man. Thank you for an incredible conversation. I'm sure that
yeah,
yeah, this it needs to be heard. And that's why like I really hope that this does get shared by our subscribers, people
yeah,
who just feel that we need some kind of conscientious change in the way that we
yeah,
perceive each other in South Africa. And you know, the I think we come from a very unique position because we are historians. We understand the past, or we try to understand the past, and by doing
yeah,
so, you know, we try to formulate a way of understanding how races, you know, coexist, or that race should actually be a non-existent. It should be something that should be like any sort of judgment should be leveled not at the race but at the person. Is this per
yeah,
and it comes to the thing that I said at the beginning. Is this a lacquer oak? Can I have a like a conversation with him?
yeah,
If both of those questions are yes, then
yeah,
what's the problem?
yeah. The narrative has to change.
Yeah,
We cannot be stuck in one silo.
yeah.
In fact, you shouldn't be in any silo. We
No,
should,
silos should be broken down.
yeah, because now it means we were all hanging on to one narrative of
Mm,
apartheid or
mm,
one narrative of South African history when there's so many narratives.
exactly.
So we need to continue exploring all other narratives out there, all other possibilities out there that will take us forward as a people.
Yeah. Tabs,
Yeah,
thank you, man. Thank you so much for this. And yeah, hopefully we have another chat soon. I'm sure we will.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and then we can quit. And for those of you who have not subscribed yet, please subscribe to the Historian Stash, so that you can listen to more of myself and Taps, my boy, from all the way
Info.
from UJ, um,
Yeah,
from Igodi. Um,
yes,
yeah, I'm so happy. But originally from your OG place, Vrystaat. Whoopstat.
yeah, yes,
Um,
originally from there.
yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for your
yeah.
story, man, and just
Always a
for
pleasure.
incredible
Yeah.
insight. And then we chat later.
Yes, for sure.
Thanks,
Thank
man.
you to your viewers. Do you
Yeah.
call them viewers, right? Your viewers, your
Stashes.
subscribers,
I call them
your
stash. Yeah, yeah.
stations. Yes, yes, yes.
It doesn't sound, I hope it's not like a cult or something, but I heard that Taylor Swift has got a Swifties, and Justin Bieber's got his Beliebers. So
You,
I'm coming in
yeah,
with my stashes, but
yeah.
it sounds quite
And,
culty.
and and Beyonce has beehives. So
Beehives. You see, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So
So
so we
to your
coming up
stash,
with
your stashy,
yeah.
yeah,
I've got
your to your stash people, your stashy. What do you call
stashes,
them?
stashes.
Your stashers. Yes,
Yes,
your
yeah,
stashers. Thank you to your stashers for taking the time to listen to this conversation. We are starting this conversation from academic level, from personal level. I think for us, it started from a personal level, then
yeah,
it went
yeah.
back to academic level. So you needed to be at a certain stage in your life, certain level of thinking in your life. Does not have to be intellectual thinking, but it can be a change in the mindset.
Yeah.
And to change your mindset, you don't need to have a PhD. You just
Hmm.
need to do the shadow work and and heal, and then you'll see what healing looks like on the other side. Yeah.
Well said. Well said, Dr. Mokoatsi. Okay,
Yes.
guys. Until next time, stay stashy. We haven't found a name yet. We are getting. I'm seeing on the Facebook. side
Yeah.
of it. We are getting some name suggestions for our podcast. So we're excited to hear from you guys more. Please send in more suggestions for a name. And yeah, until next time, stay stashy.
Bye, Donkey.
Buy your donkey. You couldn't help yourself. You couldn't help yourself.
Never. That's a classic.